Welcome again, everybody, to our June session of BusinessWise Insiders. As usual, I'm just going to keep everybody on mute during the presentation portion of today's session, just to minimize any inadvertent disruptions. The presentation itself will last 20 or 25 minutes, after which, as Deb mentioned, we'll come back here for a breakout discussion where you'll have a chance to introduce yourself and ask questions and share your own thoughts on today's topic with our wise guys as well as other attendees. And that's really the bread and butter of Insiders. Back when it was an in-person event, it was really mostly about the networking piece. And so we wanted to preserve that now that it is a virtual session. So we encourage you to stick around if you're willing to be on camera and to participate and share any insights or ideas or ask questions, because that's really the most valuable piece of the session we find. You can also always ask questions in the chat window. And if we don't get to it during the presentation, we'll be sure to touch on it in the breakout discussion. So with that, let's get started. So as Deb mentioned, today, we're going to be looking at a specific trend in B2B sales and prospecting that's emerged and accelerated in recent years. And that's changing the way sales reps do their jobs every day, from how they reach and start conversations with new prospects to how they allocate their time. And that trend is automation. In a minute, we'll talk more about what exactly automation means and the different forms it can take, and those are changing and evolving every day, as well as the specific ways it can help your efforts to set first-time appointments with good prospects. But first, I wanted to talk about the obstacles that sales reps face in their effort to make the connections that lead to those conversations and appointments. And today, those obstacles are pretty substantial. You'd think that with more ways to reach prospects, this would be easier, but it's actually the opposite. With so many incoming messages across multiple platforms, it's really much harder now to break through the noise than it used to be. And the result is that this metaphorical wall between you and your best prospects is high and getting higher. So it takes more time and effort on your part to climb over it in order to create a connection that leads to an opportunity. So the two variables there are time and effort. And if they are the two key variables, and every good opportunity is asking more of both from us as sales reps, then there are really two questions that we need to ask ourselves. The first is, how can I get more time? And then the second, and just as critically, how do I make the most of that time that I have and get? And as sales reps who ask, and more importantly, answer those two questions, gain a big leg up over the passive sales reps who are content with squeezing the most possible leads out of the least possible effort. Because honestly, sales reps who think that leads and opportunities will come by reducing the amount of effort that you're putting into it are more likely to be replaced by automation than to benefit from it. And that's something we'll repeat throughout the course of this presentation because it really is the most critical element of a Biz-Dev strategy that uses automation effectively. The bottom line is, in sales, you cannot work less and hope to succeed more, but you can work smarter so that your efforts generate more high-value leads and opportunities. And we're going to talk a lot about quote-unquote automation throughout this presentation, and I promise I'll give you more details about how it can work for you to improve your appointment setting results. But I would encourage you to keep these three questions in mind throughout today's session, and as you consider how and whether automation can work well for you. The first question is, what exactly am I automating? Because you can't automate the stuff that makes your insights and experiences unique and valuable. You need to identify what it is that you do as a human, and then you need to identify what you can offload through automation that can help you be that effective human sales rep. The second question, I just alluded to it in the previous slide, how am I using the time that automation saves me? Because again, the power of automation lies in what you do with the additional time that you've given yourself. And then finally, can I still provide value to my prospects? Because those insights and experiences are the reasons your prospects talk, meet, and do business with you. So keep these in mind as we walk through the presentation, because these are the things that are never going to change, the questions you should constantly be asking yourself, whether or not you're talking about sort of new technology. What can you offload? How can you save time? How can you use that time? And then how can I use that time to provide value? Deborah, did you want to add anything here?
Nothing other than I couldn't agree with you more, Sam.
Great. Well, we're off to a good start. Okay, so let's start by looking at where we are right now in mid-2024, the state of automation in B2B prospecting. And as I talk through some of these statistics and trends, I would encourage you to think about your own process and whether it includes some form of automation, because it might in ways that you don't expect or appreciate, and then other areas that might benefit from automation. So let's first take a look at some statistics and trends regarding automation in small and medium-sized B2B prospecting. So first, according to HubSpot, 42% of teams using a CRM utilize it to automate meeting scheduling. Now, you may not immediately think of your CRM as an automation tool, but it can be. And as you may have noticed, a growing number of tools that we use and that are available to us as B2B sales teams are beginning to incorporate automation into their suite of features. And this just goes to show you that this is a tool that pretty much every sales team uses, and nearly half of the teams that are using it to execute some form of automation already. Secondly, marketing automation, which is related to what we'll be talking about a little bit later, and which you've probably seen or are familiar with to some degree, is also seeing a higher adoption rate among small businesses, and with significant benefits. So 80% of users report an increase in leads from marketing automation, and 77% report higher conversion rates. And then finally, and critically for our purposes, 88% of small businesses report that automation enables them to compete with larger companies, according to CRM side. This competitive advantage is really important in leveling the playing field by allowing small businesses to compete with companies that have more resources. And again, it's about finding those efficiencies, saving yourself time so you can be free for those more high-value activities. And it's especially important when you don't have the resources of a large organization. Now, of course, generative AI tools like ChatGPT are getting a lot of headlines these days because they've emerged as a flashy, new, powerful piece of the automation puzzle. So I wanted to touch on that a bit. And when it comes to small businesses, you can see that the trend is starting to catch on. One recent survey found that 29% of small businesses are currently utilizing generative AI tools as part of their processes, with the highest increase in usage coming in the execution of sales and marketing strategies, which makes sense. Generative AI is most helpful in creating content, or can be, and that's really the bread and butter of sales and marketing. And then of those businesses that use generative AI, 83% report increased efficiency and the ability to focus on more valuable tasks. And then another 54% observe a positive impact on business growth. Now, as we'll discuss a little later, using automation and AI effectively can be challenging. So it's no silver bullet. I think those of us who've played around with automation tools, including generative AI, have often hit a point where we feel like we're spending more time trying to get the tool to produce what we want than we would spend if we were doing it ourselves. So it really highlights that it is about implementing it smartly. But these stats do make it clear that automation presents B2B sales teams, particularly at the small and medium-sized level, with huge opportunities for boosting lead gen and growth through efficiency. Okay, so we've been talking about automation and AI in kind of an abstract way. So I want to talk about a simple and practical way that many business-wise clients incorporate automation into their biz-dev strategy. And some of you, if you don't use it, may already be familiar with it, but it's important to walk through to see sort of how it works. We call it automated email prospecting, or AEP, and it's the automation tool available to BeWise users. So here's an example of a typical AEP campaign that we manage for our clients. So we work with clients to develop a series of 3 email messages, an initial message and 2 follow-ups. Whenever a prospect replies to a message in that sequence, the sequence then stops for that prospect. You can see each prospect, that is, receives the sequence over the course of a couple of weeks, with intervals of up to a week between the message. So on the prospect end, you receive an email. If you don't reply, 3 or 5 days later, you get message 2, and then you get message 3 after that. But it works its way gradually through your list, adding maybe 100 new prospects every day. So the campaign runs over several months. And the idea here is that AEP is running in the background, delivering replies gradually to your inbox as long as the campaign is active. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later and how to incorporate it into your Biz-Dev strategy to make it more efficient. But for now, I wanted to talk about a few key takeaways just about the current state of automation in B2B. I've thrown a lot of info at you in the past few slides, so I wanted to boil it down to a few key points. And the first is that you shouldn't be afraid to innovate in order to adapt. And in fact, it's increasingly necessary, even for small and medium-sized businesses, to do so. The B2B BizDev landscape and the technological tools that shape how you and your prospects do business are changing rapidly, so you should be prepared to change too. That rate of change is only going to get faster. And if you're not adapting or at least thinking about it, then you're by definition falling a little bit behind. And then the twin goals of your innovation should be to use technology to streamline where it makes sense, and then to use those time savings to create a diversified strategy that makes the best use of all the tools at your disposal. Deb, did you want to add anything here?
So one of the biggest benefits to using this automation is the consistency of having it working all of the time. And in the life of a salesperson, life just happens, and so many times our best intentions get interrupted with the problem or the issue of the day. At the same time, as the popularity of automation rises, it also becomes easier to ignore sometimes for our prospects. So this whole idea of automation is a two-sided coin, and I appreciate you going through the positives as well as the concerns, and the way that we can help our clients navigate all of that, I think, is really valuable.
Thanks, Devin. That's actually a great segue, because we've used the stats and trends to paint a picture of how B2B sales teams are using automation, whether it's working for them and what it says about the right way to approach it. But I think we can get to a better answer by following Deb's lead here. If we get a little bit more analytical and look exactly at how automation helps and how it can hurt if you use it the wrong way. This is not about just selling people on automation and then saying, set it and forget it. This is about creating a BizDev strategy that creates opportunities, and that involves a balance between the good parts of automation and the good parts of the non-automated things that we do as sales reps every day. So at BusinessWise, we've been helping to create and run these AEP campaigns for our clients for over 5 years now, and we've learned a few things about what works and what doesn't. So I wanted to start with the good stuff, and this is the pros of automation in the context of AEP. And the first and hopefully obvious big pro of automation is that it can save you a ton of time. We've already talked about the fact that the most effective sales reps are the ones who are best at translating time into opportunities. And automation is a great tool for generating more time. It's like a personal assistant that takes work off your plate. Like Deb said, when the normal sort of ebb and flow of the day comes at you, you don't have to worry about finding time to send those emails out, because the tool is doing it for you in the background. And sort of like when you find $10 in your jacket pocket, that time is now yours to spend, maybe in an unexpected way. And so it's key to spend it wisely. And we've seen that across the board, running these campaigns for clients, just how much it takes off the plate of, in terms of those one-off prospecting emails, those follow-up emails to prospects who aren't replying. It's just an incredible time saver in that regard. And then secondly, while taking work off your plate saves you time, it also takes work off your plate, and that's pretty nice. So automation, and one of its major benefits is that it allows you to accomplish more with the same amount of effort. In other words, it makes your job a little bit easier. But let's get specific. Here are 3 key ways it can make your job easier. First, since automated campaigns are running in the background, you can basically, like I said, set it and forget it. The emails go out every day in the background, and they require little ongoing effort from you. And then secondly, that steady stream of emails going out generates a steady stream of replies to your inbox coming back in. You are responsible for monitoring the replies coming back in, but with that campaign running, sending the emails out for you, all you have to do is sit and wait for the replies to come back in and start those conversations. And then finally, remember that you're not just scanning for prospects enthusiastically raising their hand to meet with you. You're looking to start conversations that more often than not are going to begin with resistance on the part of your prospects. So the replies coming back aren't always going to be, yes, I'm ready to meet, or yes, I need that. Oftentimes they're going to be, no, I'm not interested. Now is not the right time. I already have a vendor I'm working with. But those are also conversation starters and can be just as valuable as the eager reply. It's cold prospecting after all. Automation starts those conversations for you so you can move them forward. And then finally, and most importantly, and this is something Deb mentioned earlier, automation is by definition consistent. And the reason this one is so important is due to an underappreciated fact of life in B2B sales prospecting. And that is that consistency, the act of maintaining steady cold outreach for days, weeks, months on end, is really hard and it's really important. And this is perhaps the most critical lesson from our years of helping clients send AEP campaigns. If you execute the campaigns with patience and consistency, month over month, year after year, they will bear fruit. On the other hand, if you view each campaign or each week of a campaign or day of a campaign as make or break, and you give up when the leads aren't flowing as freely, then you're preventing the campaigns from doing what they do best, which is to execute consistently over time. And you are taking an important arrow out of your quiver as a B2B sales rep. And fortunately, automated campaigns never get too tired, too busy, or discouraged. They keep sending day in and day out. And if you as the sales rep and the sales team executing the campaign allow it to do that, they will deliver leads and opportunities over time. And then with BWise automated email prospecting, you get the wise guys as a bonus and a backup. We write your messages, we adjust and refine the strategy as necessary, and we keep everything on track so you don't have to. So those are the three big positive lessons from AEP. Deb, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add.
Not right now. Thanks, Sam.
Okay, so that last section was the good stuff, but automation, as we've mentioned several times, has its downsides too, and I wanted to spend the next few minutes talking about what we've learned over the past few years about what not to do when it comes to automated email prospecting campaigns. The first one is relatively minor, but it's worth mentioning. Like other forms of large-scale email lead gen, automated email has its limits when it comes to personalization, which means you're able to talk about prospects' challenges and priorities only in pretty broad strokes. You can insert a prospect's name or company, but when it comes to the specific content, it's not like you're writing an individual message to an individual at a company. This is a mass email tool, and it has those limitations. And the reason I wanted to mention this is related to a point I made earlier in the presentation, which is that automation is not a substitute for your human touch. It replaces an interaction where you might provide insights that speak directly to your prospect's circumstances with something much more transactional and commoditized. And that makes your initial follow-up that much more important. So when a prospect replies to an AEP campaign, and especially when they reply with something along the lines of, I'm not interested, or I'm happy with how things are going, it's critical to reply directly, promptly, and with an offer of tangible value so that you can put your full insights and experiences to use, and that there's no doubt that there's a human on the other end. So in sort of this weird paradoxical way, it is this impersonal tool for setting up a personal interaction. And if you don't take the opportunity to seize that personal interaction, you're not letting the AEP campaign do its job. And too often we've seen clients basically just waiting for prospects to raise their hand in response to an AEP campaign and to set an appointment directly, when really the benefit is starting a conversation that puts your high-touch human sales skills on full display. Secondly, and this is a huge pitfall for a lot of sales reps, automation can be too easy. And this is where automation can be the double-edged sword that Deb mentioned earlier. The exact reason it's so effective, by automating those tedious but important aspects of cold prospecting and generating that steady stream of replies, can make it dangerous because it can't and shouldn't do everything. If sales reps don't remain vigilant and dedicated to translating that saved time into opportunities, they can get lazy and just allow automation to do their work for them. They can also get out of practice with cold calling and objection handling. If you just let your automated email campaign do your interacting, you're not going to be having conversations where you're delivering hard truths that prospects may not want to hear, or delivering insights that help change their perspective. That set of skills is critical, and it's critical to practice it on top of the automated email campaign that's running in the background. And then finally, sales reps can become fearful and enter this sort of vicious cycle where you don't get the repetitions, you lose the skills, you lose the confidence, and that continues to sort of reinforce itself and put you into a situation where you're not even able to offer that high touch value that you were before automation. And then the last big downside, and this is related to the two previous slides, is that when automation is used alone, it just isn't as effective. To tie together some of what I just talked about, when automation is easy, sales reps can get into this mindset where they think, hey, automation takes hard tasks off my plate and does them for me. And then some may get complacent and think, so now I don't have to work as hard to connect with my prospects. And then their results suffer. And it turns what could be this really critical and effective Biz-Dev tool into this self-fulfilling recipe for failure, where you put all your eggs in the automation basket, you think you don't have to do anything else, you don't get the results, and you sort of blame the automation for the failure. So it really is critical to view this as a tool that helps you do your job rather than a tool that's going to do your job so you don't have to. Deborah, do you want to add anything at this point?
Thanks, Sam. You know, none of us are without competitors. And for many of us, what makes our offerings unique is us. And so what that means is a sales rep's knowledge or expertise or experience or caring or listening or follow through, creativity, etc., is really what makes us valuable to our prospects. And it's only through that personal contact that we can share that uniqueness. And that really can't come across in an email. So it is really important to figure out how to personally connect with our prospects. And our prospects feel the same way. So their problems, they feel are unique. And we need to have that kind of exchange to really make the right connections.
Thanks, Deb. And that's actually another great segue, because so now that we looked at trends in B2B sales automation and how it can really help boost your Biz-Dev results, but how it can also hurt in key ways when you don't use it the right way, we should talk about what is the right way. What are some ways to incorporate automation, and then what can we do with the time we save that really reinforces that human touch, that human perspective that Deborah just mentioned. So that's the focus of the final section of our presentation, where we'll look at a lead gen recipe using automation that provides a really strong foundation for successful Biz-Dev. So the first step, and hopefully this is obvious by now, is that you should automate your email prospecting. That regular email contact with your main target audience is a foundational ingredient of B2B Biz-Dev success. Despite all the stuff we just talked about regarding how it's a double-edged sword, this fact remains. You need to be in touch with your main target audience on a regular basis, and automated email prospecting can take that huge critical task off your plate. And so you can see on the right here, the owls are saying, if I know I'm reaching all my prospects regularly with little effort, again, as I've mentioned before, you can spend more of your valuable time on those high-touch outreach to your top prospects. So that's the first step. But let's flesh that idea out a little bit. So let's imagine that you have an AEP campaign running here on the top with a target market of several thousand prospects. And maybe your list is based strictly on firmographic criteria like industry, size, et cetera, sort of the basic criteria and contours of a target market that consists of prospects that might do business with you. So now that you know you're reaching that list of several thousand prospects with an automated campaign that requires no ongoing effort from you other than fielding those responses, then you can use your cold calling time to focus on a much tighter set of your absolute best prospects. And then you can call on those prospects much more frequently and consistently, improving your odds of breaking through. When the alternative is to call a larger list of lower value prospects, let's say you're trying to call through that entire list of 5,000 prospects, you might only reach them once and you might not have time to follow up. So you can see how the automated email strategy can make your cold calling time much more valuable. Because again, the point is that increasing efficiency does not mean figuring out how to prospect without doing any actual hard work. It means maximizing the odds that your hard work will pay off by ensuring that that work is focused on engaging with high value or warm prospects. And if we take that a little bit further, now that you have time to devote to a small set of high value prospects, you can create a high touch cadence that is completely separate from your AEP campaign. What might that cadence look like? It's sort of a calendar with a specific set of action steps based on how and whether your prospect responds that you can plan methodically and execute consistently. So maybe day one is a cold call. You don't reach your prospect, so you leave a voicemail and then follow up with a one-off email. Day three might be another cold call and then an email with a resource that you think that they might find helpful that you then follow up on with another cold call. Maybe you divide your list into groups and create a rotation where you communicate with one group every week. One suggestion I came across was to create a list of your 60 dream clients and then divide them into 4 groups of 15 and focus on one group each week. Whatever your plan is, the point is that you're using your time that you've saved through automation to create and execute a game plan that takes advantage of all the stuff that you can't automate. It's phone calls and targeted one-off emails with personal appeals to a small list of top prospects where, again, you're using your human insight, experience, expertise to engage with your prospects. And then here's just one tactic that we've talked about before that you might incorporate into such a cadence, using voicemail and email in tandem to reinforce your message and maximize the odds of a response. And we'll share the slides after the presentation. You can dig into this a little more in detail. But the point here is less the specific words you use and more to remember that these tools are still there. And since you're using automation, they're even more effective because you can focus the time and energy it takes to use them on those high reward opportunities. And paradoxically, again, so many sales reps do the exact opposite, deciding to forego the use of these effective tools because they assume they don't have to now that they're using automation. And of course, while BusinessWise offers the ease of automated email prospecting to our clients, we also offer a lot of non-automated tools that you can use in new ways to translate your time into opportunities. One in particular that I just wanted to highlight today in the context of that previous slide is a feature that allows you to create and prepare to send emails to your prospects directly from the BeWise dashboard as you prospect. You can create a library of templates, such as one for following up on a voicemail that I mentioned, completely customizable for individual prospects. And then while you create and manage those templates from BeWise, they go out from your regular email client, just as with any other prospecting email you'd send. So this is just an example of how automation can free you up again to easily send a high-touch outreach asset directly from BeWise itself. So again, to sum up our recipe for successful lead gen using automation, and this is sort of baked into a lot of what I've talked about today, but I don't think I've said it specifically or explicitly, you need to weight your opportunities. So assign them a unique value and rank your prospects by tiers or categories. I think every sales rep has a general idea of who their A prospects, B prospects, C prospects are, but it really becomes critical to sort of parse that out with precision when you're talking about automation. Because once you do that, you can align your efforts so that your valuable time and energy is spent using your insights and experience to turn the high value clients into leads and opportunities. And then, of course, the best way to do this is to diversify your approach. Use all the tools in your toolbox in a way that plays to their strengths, which are a lot more considerable now that you can use them on your best prospects. So that's basically it. Tiering your list, deciding what you can offload to automation, and then focusing your high touch outreach and experience and insights on those highest value opportunities. Deb, did you have anything to mention in conclusion?
Only that we didn't have time in today's presentation to talk about the importance of building your target market and finding those top prospects and dream clients. And one of the most valuable things that your Wise Guy can help you with is using the BeWise tool and database to help refine that process. And we know so many tips and tricks. We try to share them with you as Emily Martin does in her training, but I don't expect anybody is able to know everything that we may be able to share. So please use us and our knowledge base to help you focus on your very best prospects.
Exactly. I think oftentimes we spend a lot of time talking about sort of the broad target market at the beginning of a client relationship, because we're eager to capture all of the opportunities that might be, defined as somebody who could benefit from your product or service. But taking it that next step and creating tiered lists is just as important, often more important. And so if that's not something that you've dived into yet, we definitely encourage you to do that with your account rep. Well, thanks everybody for your patience as we walk through the presentation. I'm going to stop sharing my screen in a moment, but we hope to see you in the breakout room.